degree as minimum qualification for lawmakers. Laments high turnover of legislators at electoral circle. And you can read that on page 6. And the big story, OB to NGE Nigerians on 2023 election. Let's vote character, competence, and capacity. The writer says governance requires physical and mental energy. Atiku supporters disrupt G5 governors Lagos meeting. I will end insurgency, Atiku assures, and you can read that on page 6. NIS arrests 8 human trafficking victims in Jigawa. Fire raises 2-story building in Enugu. 700 million naira Dezeni cash. EFCC rearrange Yero and others. Still on the Blueprint newspaper on Oshun 2022, Tribunal admits subpoena to produce Adeleke certificate, and you can read that on page 5. Exchange rate will appreciate after ongoing Naira redesign, says ABCON. As RMRDC develops the fruit juice subsector. UBA promises customers Christmas to remember in support savers draw. Man 45 arrested for beating wife to death in Ogun State. You can read that story on page 13. Ekiti Assembly impeaches Arisogan, elects Adeloba first female speaker, and you can read that story on page 9 of the Blueprint newspaper. And that's all the news on the Blueprint newspaper.
All right, let's take a look at the leadership newspaper. Ekiti speaker impeached after 6 days in office. And we have governors meet on economy, NBS poverty report today. Apparently disturbed by the latest damning report on the poverty rate in Nigeria and the country's dowling economy fortune, governors of the 36 states of the Federation will meet today. The meeting leadership gathered may not be unconnected with the report released last Thursday by the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics indicating that 133 million Nigerians are now poor. According to the governor at the center, and you know, Richard, looking at this headline is actually something that the governors have to really look into. We saw where the government, because
True.
if you really want to know somebody that is poor, is someone that cannot be able to afford 3 square meals.
Yeah.
And right now it has even gone to an average Nigerian would say all he can afford is even 2 square meals, some 1 square meals. And that is how bad our situation in the country have gone. And then coupled with the fact that we had the flooding recently, which will also, you know, push more Nigerians. We're having over 133 million out of the 220 million presently that we have. Because last week we saw that we're 220 million.
Yeah.
I think this is really something that let not just the governors meet, but let us go down to the Senate, legislative, local government, chairman, councillors, come together and let us see what can we do about this. What are some of the steps that the government is hoping, or what are some of the steps they have put in place to make sure that we bring out more Nigerians out of poverty. We are going to be looking at the unemployment rate presently, look at the poverty rate in the country, and also we have to look at other things that are actually contributing to the poverty, especially insecurity. Because you cannot talk about that without talking about insecurity. Of what use will you go to the farm after farming because of insecurity? You cannot go, or have the issue where we have cattle causing damages to some of the farmlands. So I hope that this meeting will actually bring out something very, very meaningful at the end of the day, not just about talking, but we hope to see them walk the talk at the end of the day.
And I saw an infographic somewhere where there's just a segment of the map where the north, how much percentage, the south and the east and all of that, and there about 27 or thereabout million are from the urban area. And then it's not surprising that the larger majority of those who are facing this poverty are from the rural area, and it points us back to the fact that they're the ones suffering more from insecurity. They're the one affected more with insurgency, these people can't farm, which is their livelihood. What they do to support themselves, even when we feed like an average, everybody in the village, as we call the rural area villages, are farmers. And over the years, due to insecurity, they've not been able to farm. So it's not surprising that we will have food crisis, even for the rural area, where we know that food crisis hasn't been a problem for them because they're virtually all farmers. That's the trade there for them. So you find out that, okay, we need to go to the grassroots in solving the issue of poverty in Nigeria. Let's stop stopping at the urban area. We even mentioned when it comes to health, everything stops at the urban area. Sensitization always stops at the urban area. But you realize that the government really needs to start going to the villages. And I believe that there's also which we will come to that, of course, about local government autonomy and all of that. I believe if that should take place, I know weeks ago we saw that on our papers, even not now, where some states are yet to implement that. I believe if our local government should have an autonomy to a large degree and extent, then people at the rural area will get more of the government's like help directly to them than when everything is just at the top, because I believe that's what is affecting us, that everything stays at the top. But what about the bottom? Like we can see now that the majority of those who are poor are from the rural area. So it just tells us something, that we are neglecting the rural areas, and the government needs to do something about it. They need to be educated. Farming, security, they need to have that just as much as those in the urban area, that they have equal right to every other opportunity that there is at the urban area. They also deserve that. And we should stop being shallow. Nigerian government needs to go deep in everything and involve everybody.
You know, you spoke about the autonomy, and that is a big story of the Leadership newspaper, where we have constitution amendment. Hope rises as 16 states vote for the local government autonomy. And the writer following that say 3 states vote against, Adamawa abstain, 8 states vote needed to overcome the hurdle. And civil society organization foresee favorable outcome. And just like you said, I look forward to that. I think the last time it was on the paper, we had just 11 states that actually had that actually voted for the local government autonomy. And I'm happy that we're having, you know, every state to be, you know, a separation of powers, while to go down to the local government. Of course, the local government will benefit if they are on their own, if they can stand on their own. Can you imagine how our local government schools would look like? Have you imagined how even the health sector at the local government would look like, and all of that thing? So I feel that for some states that are refusing, obviously Nigerians will say that it's because you want to keep being on power, sitting on their rights, and they're making them not to be able to exercise all that is, you know, they're supposed to be rightfully there. So we look forward to more states. We are seeing that Adamawa is abstaining. I hope that Adamawa will do something about it. I remember the guest we had one time at a national talk, and I asked him a question, and I said, what happened when we have, because if already the states and the Senate have passed that bill, the Constitution was amended, it's left for the states presently. That's the state House of Assembly to be able to put that into law, and then it will now go down to, because it wasn't just the local government, we're also looking at the judiciary actually also having total autonomy to stand on their own. And so, and I asked him this particular question. I said, what happened if they, you know, that no matter how long you serve as a governor or as a senate, you will definitely retire someday, and you want to serve in the local government. What now happen if you frustrate that local government and the same local government you hope to retire to? So I hope that more states will not just be ignorant of the fact that it will benefit us at the end of the day. So I hope that we have neglected for a very long time, and I think it's high time we, you know, key into that sector. So we look forward to seeing more states, you know, keying into the local government autonomy. Still on the Leadership, we have police fuel kidnap attempt rescue 76 victims in Kaduna. Don't fight for Senegal, lose to Holland. That you can find on page 47 for those who have been following the FIFA World Cup. And then we have a picture story also here. So you will do well, grab the Leadership and read any of the story there.
And the big story, no excuses. Blame games if Nigerians hire me. This is coming from Peter Obi. And the writer says, job of a leader is to find solutions. That story on the front page of the Daily Times, and then continue on page 9 from the federal government. I will reenact Balewa's administrative legacies. This is coming from Atiku, and you can read that on page 2. How to avoid electoral violence in 2023 by Khan and the Sultan. And we have a picture story where we can see Atiku, the PDP presidential candidate. And that's all the news on the Daily Times newspaper.
This day newspaper, World Bank President, Nigeria in urgent need to strengthen fiscal management. The writer say harps on need to create unified, stable and market-based exchange rates. CUPP launch and Emefiele on Naira redesign, alleged move by lawmakers to scrutiny initiative. Other stories still on this day, we have lack of fiscal autonomy, funding gaps threaten independence of the RMAFC. This is coming from Shinu. And we have on it's Igbo's right to produce the next president. This is coming from Adebajo. And then the writer says APC has disqualified the Southeast. Nigerians unity negotiable. Baba Ahmed posts. And the big story here will be to Nigerians. I will be in charge of Nigeria. Hold me responsible. Says he won't give excuse as president but provide solutions. Retaliates commitment to transforming nation and outlines agenda. Declares era of borrowing of consumption over. Explain delay in releasing his manifestos and clarify he didn't offer Kwankwaso money to step down for him. And just like we saw in the paper, it is the responsibility of the media and the journalists to hold you responsible and accountable for every word you utter. So we will hold Peter Obi to this. He has promised Nigerians to hold him responsible because he will take charge. Yeah. And he said the time for borrowing. I believe that what he meant is that it's over already. It's over, yeah. So we look into how we can create wealth inwardly, and we have given some of the recommendations we feel as Nigerians that it's high time possibly we stop importing things. I remember during the time of Abacha, some of the things people kick against was the fact that nothing was going out of the country. And I think to some large extent, in as much as he was an autocratic leader, but to some extent, if you look at development in Nigeria then was actually, to some extent, something was working. So we look forward to not an autocratic leader, but we look forward to someone that will look inwardly and see what can we do. Why don't we, all the sectors that have been lying dead, why don't we resurrect them, do something about it, agriculture and all of those things, So when we do that to some extent, I believe that we'll stop borrowing. And I think yesterday we look at the value-added tax that have been, put on Nigeria. Also, we'll actually look how we can make it minimal for Nigerians at the end of the day. Yeah. And that's all on this day newspaper.
On the Nation newspaper, Ekiti Assembly gets new speaker. I remain in office, and you can read all of that on page 3. World Bank advises federal government on fiscal adjustments. That can be found on page 7. Saka's cause brace in England win, Senegal lose to Holland, and you can read that on page 30. Ogun NNPC to reconstruct Ajibo Sagamu Road, says Abiodun. That can be found on page 27. And the big story on the Nation newspaper, why Atiku PDP will lose in 2023 by Kwankwaso. The writer following that story, nobody can win presidential poll without Lagos, Kano, Rivers vote. No indication we will lose, PDP tells NNPC and NPP candidate. And you can continue with that story on page 4. How 1 million man PVC march for Tinubu shut down Kano, and you can read that on page 5. Cut spending to rein in inflation, IMF tells federal government. And at the downside of the paper, Kogi no longer safe for criminals, and 11 family members die of food poisoning. What a sad one. And watch what you eat as a family, and you can read that story on page 2. And that's all the news on the Nation newspaper.
On the Punch newspaper, impeachment, new Ekiti speaker, successor differ. Hoodlums invade Atiku Rally, supporters injured. And from the World Bank, petrol, electricity subsidies hurting poor Nigerians. And I'd like to read a little from that. The World Bank have said that subsidies benefit only rich households and reduce government spending on poor Nigerians. This was contained in a statement on the bank's website announcing the launch of the new Nigerian Public Finance Review report. According to the bank, Nigerian resources has been consumed by inefficiency and regressive subsidies on petrol, electricity, and foreign exchange. It added that the subsidies were far more than what was spent on education, health, and social protection in 2021. The statement read, for years, a large share of Nigerian resources have financed inefficient and regressive subsidies for petrol, electricity, and foreign. Or to what Nigeria, the government especially, subsidy might actually make the average Nigerian to feel its pain, but I believe that at the long run, it should be for the benefit of the country. So we look forward to when the petrol, electricity, and other subsidies that we pay will actually be cut down to its minimal, so that everybody at the end of the day.
For every Nigerian, like, we have to stop thinking short term. If we truly want growth in this country, we have to look long term. And it won't be easy. Like, it's not going to. Just like yesterday, administration, some blueprint. We need someone to concretely tell us this is the way forward. And when we do this, this is the result we will get. And when we are patient, we will definitely worrying about we will suffer this, we will suffer that. If this thing will work and give us results 4 years from now, 5 years from now, I think every Nigerian should be hopeful for that. So let's start looking long term and forget the short term result that we always want. We have seen that it hasn't taken us anywhere. It hasn't taken us far. Let's now start thinking of what will take us far. And I believe that long term, when it comes to everything, your business, your investment, your finances, nothing happens overnight. It's not being implemented. We will see a result.
That you can find on page 12. And the big story for the Punch says drafted 17 members elect Adelugbe as new speaker. I remain speaker. No impeachment took place. This is coming from Aribi Sogan, and you can read that on page 2. UCH lost 661 doctors, pharmacists, nurses to brain drain between 2020 and now CMD laments, and you can read that on page 8. And I would like to say, Stella, it's not surprising though that our doctors and pharmacists are having brain drain, because weekends coming up that doctors, nurses, and people in the medical front line are having a brain drain. When you don't even have the resources, when you don't shift, probably about the brain drain, that depressed, exhausted, and I mean that doctor is not qualified. So this is very dangerous. At the same time, it's not surprising that we are having Nigeria and they are going elsewhere, and those people are not suffering this. So I keep saying it's not our gain. Our doctors leaving is not our gain. We're losing. Someone somewhere else, some other country, some other health sector are benefiting from our doctors leaving, so we are definitely losing. Yeah, Richard, permit me to just read what the Chief Medical Director said concerning the story. He said, the Chief Medical Director of the University College Hospital Ibadan, Professor Jesse Otabayo, has disclosed that about 661 clinical workers resigned their roles from 2020 to October 15, 2022 to relocate to other countries, a situation which has been taking its toll on the running of the hospital. He made the lamentation on Monday, which was yesterday, in Ibadan at a media briefing to mark the 65th Founders' Day of the hospital. Otabayo said, every week I receive about 15 resignation letters. Their months are not going to be good for Nigeria, because in the next 5 years we will feel full of the day. We remember the paper that said who gains at the end of we're enriching our own country, and then if
retrial of Ogun PDP governorship case. Kogi no longer safe for criminals under bail. The Inspector General and 75 million naira apartments ex-AGF Atun Northeast. The writer following that story, APC cause of present hardship. This is coming from Akwa Ibom Governor. Dan Kwambo dumps Wike's group, donates 20 buses to Atiku's camp, and that can be found on page 2. And at the downside of the paper, history budget, and that can be found on page 28 of Nigerian Tribune. And that's all the news on Nigerian Tribune.
A new telegraph we have still coming from the World Bank. Nigeria needs $3 trillion investment in infrastructure by 2050. Oil prices rebound as report. Other stories here coming from Okowa. We have 240 billion naira oil. Humanitarian Affairs Minister disowned 206 billion naira inserted in ministry's 2023 budget. Wike declares logistics support for Kwankwaso's campaign. And inauguration embark on week-long prayers or Osun PDP direct supporters. The big story says ban ex-governors from contesting the National Assembly election. This is coming from the NIDLS DG, and said advocate degree as the minimum qualification for senators and reps. Governor nemesis of legislature coming from Bajabian Miller. And I'd like to read something little from it. The Director General of the National Institute for Legislative and Democratic Studies, Professor Suleiman Abubakar, has called for the amendment of the Constitution to bar former governors from seeking elections into the National Assembly to avoid turning the Senate into a retirement home. He also called for an upward review of the educational qualification of the National Assembly legislators to an undergraduate degree. Abubakar made the call in a paper titled High Turnover of Lawmakers, Impacts and Way Forward, which he presented at the House of Representatives Press Corps Week on Monday in Abuja. Also blamed the high turnover in the National Assembly on governors who decide who to scale through primary elections. Another possible intervention to stem the high turnover is legislative actions by way of amendment to our constitution. This could be by prescribing more years for the legislative tenure or stemming the inclusion of retired governors and other executives into eroding the independence of the legislature. The legislature is too important to be the retirement home of governors and other executive bigwigs. All effort must be put in place to change the trend, he submitted. And I'm totally in support of what he said. This is not the first time we're talking about governors turning the Senate or even the House of Legislative a retirement home. And sometimes it's even alarming when you see some of them from the beginning to the end of their tenure, not even a bill have they ever raised to benefit where the federal constituencies they are represented. No wonder they're comfortable and they do not even want to pass and amend the bill for the local government to also have. So we look forward to when all of this will be, implemented, banning ex-governors. I totally believe that. And I look forward to even when more states will stop paying retirement for, from a better thing that had been passed into law.
Because it's a very good establishment, and I hope it's being implemented very soon. Because just as you said, it's another thing for you to go there and work. But most of the times, these governors that end up in the Senate or House of Representatives don't do anything. In fact, a governor can be very active as a governor and do completely a retirement home for them, obviously, because they don't do their work, forgetting that, your constitution needs jobs to be done. Like, they need infrastructure, they need building, they need you to work, you need to pass bill. You're not there to rest. It is a position that if you know you're not going to work, don't even go there. But because for some reason in your mind you've turned it to a retirement home, you finish. I know a lot, and it's unfortunate that we can't call names. It's just for sure they did well as governors, but when they go to the Senate or the rest, whereas if you're tired as the governor, go and rest, but not in the Senate. Allow those who are going to work to work. So I believe this is something very good, a very exciting one for Nigerians, and I hope that it's passed into law and implemented very soon, that we will not see any ex-governor trying to go to the Senate or House. We don't need them there. If you want to retire, finish as a governor, and retire peacefully.
We'll quickly look at other stories still on the New Telegraph newspaper. Vote buying, CUPP alleged plan by the APC to harvest over 10 million voters' bank accounts. That you can find on page 3. Dam to boost power supply. 2023, an essential election for Nigeria, coming from Peter Obi, says he didn't offer Kwankwaso 40 billion naira to step down for him. Pledges to ensure 35% affirmative action for women, and Ganduji assured Tinubu of Kanu votes. Other stories here, we have Kogi no longer safe for criminals under Bello, coming from the IGP. We will resist desperate politicians' attempt to plot state into pre-2015 insecurity era, coming from the governor. And we have on Sweber Africa, Power China seal $500 million agri-industrial deal in Abia. That you can find on page 4. Downside, we have a study that said repeated stress accelerating aging of the eye. So if you want to know more about our study, check that on page 26. But before we move to further, other papers we have lined up for you this morning, let's take back after this break. Welcome back. If you're just tuning in, still the Dailies on Echo Television International. I'm your host, Elisha Dashon, and my co-host has been Rachel Tanzi. Thank you, Rachel, for doing
You're
this
welcome,
with me.
Sarah.
Yes, to our viewers, remember we're live on Facebook. We really love to hear from you. There have been quite a number of interesting stories on the papers this morning. So we really love to hear from you. What do you have to say about the local government autonomy? We have just 16 states that have passed that into law or have actually implemented it. And so you begin to ask questions. How about the other states? For those who are adamant, for those who have refused to say a thing, we really love to hear from you. So drop your comment on our official Facebook page, and then other stories that have been flying on the paper. And let's move further to other papers lined up for us, Rachel.
On the Matrix newspaper, Nigeria's ex-accountant general Otunla Fadeli forfeits 775 million naira properties to federal government. Ganduje describes Peter Obi's emergence in presidential race as, and if you want to continue reading what he is saying, you can get the Matrix newspaper for yourself. Still on World Cup, Netherlands beat Senegal 2-0 as Wales, US settle. Governors meet today over economy security. And the big story on the Matrix, population census, growing concerns over Nigeria's soaring populace, and the writer says Gbajabiamila laments Nigeria's failure to take population growth seriously, failure to harness, maximize advantages of changing population dangerous. This is still coming from Gbajabiamila. Still on the Matrix newspaper, OPEC list, Nigeria drops to 7th position. Signature Bank begins operations, targets over 40 million Nigerians. Senate demands unexplained 206 billion naira in humanitarian ministry's budget, summons finance minister. Supreme Court orders retrial of Ogun PDP governorship legal. Then we have a picture story with logistics support. The presidential candidate of the new Nigeria People's Party, Rabiu Kwankwaso, with Governor Nyesom Wike in Umuahua, Rivers State on Monday, November 2021, 2022. And you can read more of that story in the Matrix newspaper. And at the downside of the paper, again, Wike calls opposition party, vows to support Kwankwaso. And you can read more of that story on the Matrix newspaper. And that's all the news on the Matrix newspaper.
On Daily Independent, Minister disowns suspicious 206 billion naira inserted into ministries 2023 budget. Ekiti Assembly boils, get new speaker impeaches Aribesoga. And you can find that story on page 26 of the the Daily Independent newspaper. Still on Daily Independent, we have respect our parks or we will return to the trenches as one federal government. Level Benue family members die after eating food, and I hope that all that will be investigated and will check the reason for that food poisoning. Gunmen abduct former Akere Dodu's aide, demand 100 million naira ransom. On 2023 presidential election should be about competence to govern. This is coming from the Labour Party candidate Obi. Kogi not safe for criminals under Yahaya Bello, IGP declares. You threaten to dump refuse at Anambra. Okay, I take that story again. You threaten to dump refuge at Anambra government house. So we need to check why they, threaten to do that. So you want to know more? Check page 6 of the Daily Independent. CUPP raises fresh alarm over threat to scrutin 2023 election. Charges DG, DSS, IGP to show commitment to poll. Says plot to remove INEC chairman still alive. Downside of the paper, we have how knife wielding attacker slip past security storm National Assembly. So you can read that too on page 6. We have a picture story here where we can see Governor Abiodun of Ogun State. So you can do well check more about what that story is all about. And that's all on the Daily Independent.
On the Guardian newspaper, gunmen abduct over 100 in Zamfara. Confusion as Ekiti Assembly elects another speaker within 6 days. Kogi too hot for criminals under Bello, says the Inspector General of Police. Southeast youths call for Soludo's impeachment, and you can read that on page 7. And the big story, Buhari reignites politics of oil in North, close to another election. And the writer says stakeholders demand transparency, accountability as NNPC spends state fund for exploration. There's oil in Gongola Basin, but 1 billion barrel is elusive. And you can read more of that on the front page and on page 6 of the Guardian newspaper. And on the downside of the paper, Osun PDP enjoins members to pray fast over Adeleke's inauguration, and that can be found on page 5. And this is coming from Obi on the 2023 election. We need a competent and fit leader. You can read what he has to say on page 6. And that's all the news on the Guardian newspaper.
On the Voice of Liberty on 2023, how electoral violence in 2023 can be avoided. This is coming from Khan and the Sultan. Still on 2023, Wike promises Kwankwaso logistics support for campaign after pledging same to Obi. Still on 2023, CUPP alleges uncovering APC digital vote buying plot, passes vote of confidence on INEC. And the big story, which is on Naira redesign, CBN launches countdown clock on its website. The Central Bank of Nigeria has launched a countdown clock on its website for the January 31st, 2023 deadline for the 1,000 naira, 500 naira, and 200 naira notes currently in circulation, showing days left till new naira notes will stop being legal tender. So you have to look up for that. Those in businesses and other places should actually take that seriously to avoid any precautions that will come thereafter. Anti-Obi, Igbo youth tell Soludo to resign or risks having government house filled with refuse. Nigerian unity negotiable needs renegotiation, Ohanize President General. Downside of the paper, we have the National Labour Congress demand reversal of mass sack of workers by the Kaduna State government. And that's all on the Voice of Liberty.
On the Business Day newspaper, the big story, 5G auction sets stage for telecom's future. 1 in 3 households can afford 1,687 naira daily nutritious diet. This is coming from UNICEF, and you can read page. You can turn to page 30 to read more of that report. Echo bridges, while Lagosians must wait for 6 more months, and you can read that on page 30. Signature Bank begins operation, targets over 40 million Nigerians, and that can be found on page 31 of the Business Day newspaper. Nigeria is on track to auction more 5G licenses, setting the same for the future of the country, for telecommunication in the country. And you can continue with that story on page 2. And that's all the news on the Business Day newspaper.
On the first news, 11 Benue family members die after eating food. Supreme Court orders retrial of Ogun PDP governor suit. And we have the screaming on the first news newspaper, who done it? We have 206 billion naira inserted in my ministry's 2023 budget. Then we have Sadia Farouk cries out, expresses surprise. Money not released from the NEDC project in 2022 now reoccurs tenfold. Senate resolved to summon the finance minister, and I hope that they really thoroughly check into all of this. We need to know how much it is, and then for us seeing some money that cannot be accounted for, it really needs to be audited. Still on first news, we have Ekiti Assembly crisis, how Arebe Soga predicted own impeachment 24 hours earlier, removed after only 6 days in office, sacked speaker accuses ex-governor Fayemi of masterminding his ordeal, alleges assassination threats. Saka Belham sparkled as ruthless England crushed Iraq, that you can also find inside the paper. And we have on 2023 presidency, Peter Obi denies offering Kwankwaso 40 billion naira to step down. Like Obi, Wike pledges logistic support for Kwankwaso campaign. South African court orders Zuma back to jail. I will consult Soludo for solution to Nigerians' problems, says Peter Obi. Security operative overpower bandit and rescue 76 victims in Kaduna. And 2022 World Cup, my last opportunity to make our dream come true. This is coming from Messi. Why Atiku won't win 2023 presidential election, coming from Kwankwaso, says the PDP flag bearer failed because polls conduct. And Ganduji to Kwankwaso, stage managed in Kaduna. Let's see if you will match pro Tinubu's rally. This is coming from the present governor of Kaduna of Kano State. Stakeholders kick over Senate directive to the NLNG to pay 18.4 billion naira. One Nigerians FDL ease of doing businesses under threat. And on the issue of the crude oil theft, pirates demand sack of the CDS over burning of vessel. And the last story, Netherlands outclassed Senegal with 2 late goals. So if you're interested in any of the stories, do well to grab the first news newspaper and read any of the story of interest.
On Nigerian News Direct, UBA customers assured of memorable Christmas in Super Savers draw. Ekiti Assembly impeaches 6-day-old Speaker elects Adeluba. 13% derivation. Wike's claim incorrect, misleading. This is coming from Akwa Ibom professionals. And the big story, Senate humanitarian minister battle over alleged 206 billion naira budget padding. Tribunal resumes hearing as expert establishes fraud in election results and BVA's report. This is still on the Osun elections. I didn't offer Kwankwaso 40 billion naira to step down. This is coming from OB. TCN to deploy software to check grid collapse. Federal government restate Nigeria's commitment to sustainability of blue economy. And that's all the news on Nigerian News Direct.
And let's take a look at the Business Standard. And we have retail power price hike looms after 19.92% rise in bulk tariff. And you can look down where we have the war shocks and how the government is adjusting some of the prices of goods over there. We have RMG value addition drops as production cost rises. October revenue sees 10% growth despite import crop, and we have the LC opening fell by 7.24% in October. Dhaka asks diplomats to follow norm regarding Bangladesh internal affairs. And we have militants staging a comeback police suspect, and that is all on the Business Standard.
On the Sponge Sport Extra, Qatar 2023 FIFA World Cup, England 6, Iran 2. Osimhen tipped to become world's best striker. And we have Messi dismisses fitness rumors, and there is Senegal 0 and then Netherlands 2. Gakpo, Klaassen punish wasteful Lions. Champions begin defense, and this is France versus Australia. From zero to hero, Ogunboy Saka dazzles in Qatar. And Greenwood trial set for November 27th. Madrid shut door on Ronaldo, and you can read that on page 8. Real to replace Benzema with Leo, and you can read that on page 2. Adesanya keen on UFC Africa, and I would like to say that would be a good establishment if we can have UFC here in Africa, and you can read that on page 7. Barca PSG battle for Gundogan, and you can read that on page 8. And that's all the news on Sponge Sport Extra.
All right, let's conclude it with the Teen Trust newspaper. Rushing children to become wonder kids devastate growth, and I totally agree with that. The fact that they're super intelligent does not mean you rush them. Let them go through the various stages and actually grow at their own pace without rushing. So I hope that parents will grab this paper and actually read more on that. Winning the UBA contest raises my hope for a career. You can read more of that story too. And we have other stories on lifestyle, on career, well-being, and also short stories for kids. So if you're interested in any of the stories, do well to, get the Teen Trust and read any of the story that is of interest to you. And that is how far we can come on the program, The Dailies on Network Television International. It has really, really been a privilege to always have you here. Thank you, Richard, for doing this with me.
You're welcome.
Thank you to the crew members. Thank you to our followers. Thank you to all those who love and have been praying for us. Thank you to the Equa executive. Until we come your way again, do have a blessed day ahead.